Welcome, everyone. This is the nuts and bolts section of the beginning of this morning. When we don't have a nuts and bolts, everybody shows up for it anyway. So that happened in lacrosse. People want the basics. They just keep asking for the basics. So each time the basics are different application is what it amounts to. Kim and I are going to, we want to begin with what are you expecting today? You're coming here with something in mind. Please.
I'm looking to get jazzed about servant leadership with like-minded people.
Jazzed with like-minded people. Excellent. That's not that jazz part is new, but the information is repeated. Thank you. I like the jazz. Please.
Being able to convey how important this is to my current employer. And
Convey it to my current employer. God bless you. Others. We have to fill up the board. Please.
So, want to get a little bit clear about the kind of the business case. I love the values, the philosophy, all that, but I'd like to hear more about
Clear on the business case. Results.
developing results.
Great. You'll get that. Please.
I teach courses in servant leadership here at Wisconsin Lutheran College, so I'm looking for some new practical insights and applications to fold into the course.
Professor looking for new insights. Fold it in. Please.
I'm going to be teaching a group of young leaders at our company, so I just want to get a good refresher on the basics.
A good refresher on the basics. We're going to give you one of the basics, but we'll touch on them all, I'm sure. Excellent. Boy, we got a bunch of people working on other people. Excellent. That's the way it's supposed to work. What would you like to walk home with?
strategies on how to help engage a low performer.
Engage a low performer. Excellent. That is the subject, engaging. Please.
I was interested in getting a Christian perspective on engagement versus what the secular world calls engagement.
Secular versus Christian. Normally, we don't talk faith here, but let's see what we do with that. I think you might have gotten some already. Please.
I just really want to learn some new things about what it truly means to listen first.
Truly listen first.
What does that mean?
Question mark.
New things.
Okay, excellent. We will go over these at the end to see if we've covered them. Please.
Taking the disengaged and having them reignite.
Reignite the disengaged. Excellent. That's a tough one.
How to stay a positive leader.
How to stay a positive leader. Oh, that's excellent. I have that problem myself, so if we don't get it, I'll share it. Thank you. I also want to recognize Geneva Johnson, who is one of the Greenleaf Center's board members emeritus. Welcome. Well, let us begin. You've all seen this statement. It is the seminal statement. Do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer? Can you think of a better business outcome than developing the human assets in your company, or your firm, or your community, or your family? More autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants. Free is what that says to me. What is the effect on the least privileged in society? Will they benefit? Or at least, will they not further be deprived? Boy, that's a tough one. But with mature servant leaders, it can be done. It is done. And if you want, I can give you a very short example later. This is a very interesting piece of information for you. There has been a whole series of things happening in the Academy of Management Analysis. Started in '85. Started with somebody who wrote something along the lines of servant leadership for politicians. He thought that was necessary. Then another fellow came along and took another swipe at that, a little broader. Another one came along and really took a large, deep swing. 3 years later, another fellow came along and took that and put it into the vocabulary of professors in colleges, but he left one thing out, the moral part, void. He said it doesn't have anything to do, and that's what's been taught up until 2013, when that was disavowed. So that's a very significant piece of information to have in the back of your mind when you're dealing with others. You know, where did they learn it from? How did they learn it? The moral content is now moving back in. Most universities are redoing it. Universities now, there's 20 or 40 of them that have the top universities in the country have said, we want to know the moral content of the students before they come in the building. That's important to us. Just began in the last year. So here are, this is Ann McGee Cooper. She gave us permission years ago. But here are some of the, engagement is our subject. How to engage. And these highlighted letters, this column is personal power. This column is servant leadership. So you take controls information to maintain power, shares the big picture. With that, you get an engaged person. So what do you think?
I agree. I can say, even going back to in my prior career, I was an elementary school teacher, and I had a principal that I worked for 12 years who was so awesome because when I first started, he said to me, you need to work with these children and take them where they are and move them forward. And I've kept that in the back of my mind for all of these years as I've worked with my team and I'm developing people. And my office is going through a little bit of a transition right now, so it was wonderful to be able to look to the team and say, you know, we're in a transition. What kinds of things are you willing to move forward and help with? And by having everyone come around and think of the things that they're able to do and move the group forward has been really helpful. So it goes back to, you know, really investing in your people and asking them how they want to move things forward.
And power-oriented people, power isn't bad, and it's really political is the word, because you have to get things done. And in complex structures, you have to give up things and trade off things. What do you trade off? You know, where is the high ground? What is your focus in the big picture? But controls information to maintain power. So we'll give you some information. It's adequate. It's what I think you should have. But I'm not going to give you everything because I just don't feel comfortable. Maybe I don't trust you. Maybe I don't trust myself. Maybe I just want to control the information you get. That's a huge difference as opposed to, in the servant leader environment, shares the big picture information. You know, does the company go out? We had one president. He went out every quarter to every employee in the company. And he said, here's our results. He gave him the bottom line numbers on everything. He just overdid it almost because he gave him so much information, but I prefer that, quite frankly. So much information, it confused them. Some of the information they didn't know what to do with, or they would misunderstand it. But I'd rather be there than I would with not enough, or sending out a signal of not enough. Let me give you an example. This is in the school system. A principal, definitely motivated by the principles we have here. In this case, it was character education was the focus, but there's no difference between the two. One is just very much school. So she had this middle high school roaring along, and they were free. They were free. They could speak to the principal, the superintendent of schools. They had their own governing body. And at one point they said, you know, ma'am, you don't understand what we need. And we think we do. And we want to build some lesson plans. And so then she describes this phenomenon. Here I am. I've spent my whole life being an administrator for lots of years. And suddenly, I'm supposed to be the one running the building. And the people I'm serving are asking me, telling me, that I'm not quite in sync with their students. And she also knew that the teachers were not. that they weren't right in tune. And so she said, well, come on in, students. Tell me what you have in mind. So they came in, they talked through what they were trying to do, and every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, this group of students builds lesson plans for the teachers. That takes some courage. There's a way to do it, a proper way to do it, and there's a time and a place maybe that you don't do it. The person of character, this is Frick and Sipes, I don't know if I pronounced that right, work. And these are the principles that they say represent servant leadership. But putting people first. That principle put that person first. Got a thought?
Yes. I think that it took a vulnerability to put people first in that situation. And it's hard for people at times, but it's so great to be able to do that and think about it's not about you, it's not the I, it's about the people that you're with and the group that you're trying to work and build up and how you bring those people forward.
I have a question for you. I was Saturday morning, about 1 a.m., I got in an Uber taxi.
Oh, wow.
And so I always have a conversation. I said, do you have another job? Usually they have another job. And he said, no, this is my only job, and I like working at night. Okay. And so we had some conversation. Turns out he is has a 3-year-old daughter, which he tries to spend a lot of time with. He got divorced after 5 months after having the baby. It was the best thing to do. It's better this way. You've heard these stories. Well, how was your high school? Or how was your school system? Horrible. Well, what are your dreams in life, or what do you want to do? He says, well, when I came out of high school, I wanted to be a professional wrestler. I said, okay, that's pretty interesting. How'd you do? Well, I injured myself kind of early, and that was the end of that career. Well, what do you have in mind now? And he says, well, I'm going to go to work for a buddy during the day, and he's going into the tile business, like in your bathroom, and lay tile. Now, what would you do next with this young man? You're the counselor. You're the servant leader. You just met him. In my case, I call him, he's one of God's children. I could have been sitting in his seat. I'm sitting in this one. What do you do now for him? You got another 15 minutes and the ride's over. What would you do? Puts people first, foresight, leads with moral authority. That could be your role. What would you do? Please. Dreams are for a daughter. That's a great one. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Thank you. What else would anybody else do? Well, all I did is say, when it's all done, what do you hope to accomplish? And he went around like this, said nothing. Then I asked him one more time, very, very gently. And he went around, and I stopped. Because you can't ask somebody to do something they're not capable of doing, particularly at that moment. But you don't know how the seed is planted. That's for sure. You just don't. I'm an old guy, but I'm old enough to see the other end of the circle. All I did was ask him those 2 questions very gently as I know how, and that takes extra energy on my part. And I left. I thanked him. I wished him a good life, and I left. And then the next day, he rated me a 5. Most people, if you don't do it right, they'd get angry at you. They'd take it out on you, whatever they're disturbed about.
You were listening and you were gentle, and those are important. Listening is so important as a servant leader. And I think that some people don't take enough time to listen. And sometimes when there's a pause, it's hard for people for that silent time. But when you listen and you take the time to think about it, you can help people move forward.
Yeah, I've got another little, well, we have time for probably a couple more stories. Fella named Thomas. 4.5 years old, he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, Mr. Pieper, I want you to be my dad. And so I said, Thomas, I can't be your dad, but I will be your friend. So I ended up being his godfather. And this is a family I couldn't describe to you standing up here, but I will give you some. Teenager, put on a bus, sent to a suburban school. The bus beat all the kids up before they ever got there. On Redland, got $150 a month more than other families did on that were in support. Could have gone to Hershey. We went out there, and his mom didn't want to sign him up. Could have gone to he and his brother, a school in New Mexico. Mom didn't want to let him go. So one boy is really in his bedroom, 31 years old, and he's maybe 34, and he doesn't come out of his bedroom. And he's a smart guy. He writes some extraordinary kind of fiction, but won't share it with anybody. This young man, which is the youngest in the family, gets in jail twice, has a total of three children. So I go out to another town in the country, and whenever I go there, I call him up, and if something good is going, he will meet with me. If something is not going good, then he has a reason not to meet with me. So I said, how you doing? He says, well, I got these, and I'm going to leave some things out because they're so horrific. He ended up, his mom could never tell him anything positive. I'd even practice it with her in one room. Okay, now go tell Thomas this. Here's a report card. He's getting good marks from the teacher. Just say, that's good. So they walk in the other room, and mother says, you could have done better. That went on for years. So now Thomas has got some horrific things. He joined a gang. I won't explain it to you because it's just a little bit too rough. He leaves town to get away from the gang. Some people take an interest to him. He's with a girl that he has a child with. So now he's sitting down and he spills his whole life on me. He remembers everything that I only got together with this guy maybe twice a year, except for his report cards. And I get together with the family a couple times a year. But I had little hopes of what was going to happen with him, but it's not me to judge. So he says, well, you remember when we used to ride around in the car and you never had the radio on? We just talked. I said, well, I guess that sounds like me. And he went through all these things that we did. Just, little incidental things, a couple hours, a couple times a year. He said, I remember. And he went right through all of them. I never, ever would have believed that he would remember all that. He says, when he's a manager in these big restaurants. They have shifts of managers. And he said, every place I go, he said, I'm completely different than the other people. When I got somebody with a problem, I ask them, what do they think the solution might be? And I encourage them to think. And he says, everybody else just goes around telling people what to do. He said, I'm getting together, and he shows me all these pictures with his child, which is now 3 or 4 years old. I'm getting together every you can see he's getting together with them all the time. But it was pretty amazing that he remembered, and as everyone remembers, if the heart is there, what you have talked to them about. There was a fellow that wrote me a letter. He said, I worked for you for a couple of months. I was a scholarship guy from Madison, and I'm now in India. I'm retired, but in 1971, you gave me a project. I have no recollection of this. And 30 days later, you said, okay, you're ready. Go ahead and do this. And he said, that was the most exciting thing that I've ever had in my life. I never forgot it. So you just don't know. You just don't know. We are not here to judge. We are here to put people first, to compassion. Foresight is helpful if you got enough experience. And then there's foresight like actually you can see where things are going. Leads with moral authority. It doesn't mean you're a boss. It just means you're operating at a higher level of morality than just today and what I want and what I'm expected to do. Story?
I was just thinking about a young person who was part of my parish and parish council, and how we work with having young people on the committee who can help us as we move forward, and are open within our parish to help young people be a part of it and want to move things forward. And again, listening to their ideas and things that they would like to bring forward, so that it isn't just about the higher ups or the older people in the parish moving things. So we've had some children come back after they've graduated to tell us how wonderful it's been to be a part of it, and then the leadership skills that they've had moving forward in different college activities and things. So I think those are helpful.
We're talking about engaging people. You know, they get some energy. You help them get the energy, discover it. You don't give it to them. They get it. And somehow you facilitate it just by caring, by listening. What would you do with this person? They're almost a universal person. Except for art, this person has all the elements of somebody who's a world-class citizen. Comes up through the crafts, has a good, loves learning, loves serving other people one at a time, not as groups. Grassroots, in the community, just an array of things all the time. We'll take some people with him, but he likes to go in there and actually help the people one-on-one. He's advanced quickly in the context of his present responsibility. He's got hundreds of people reporting to him. He's really doing well. He's probably being moved too fast by his managers. Maybe not. What would you do with someone like that? Everybody needs somebody. My daughter has this slogan, but she works with people awards of the court kind of folks. And she said, everybody deserves to have somebody. But that applies to everybody.